The kitchen smelled of garlic and regret, the kind that lingers long after the meal is gone. I stood at the counter, my hands slick with onion juice, the knife slicing through the papery layers with a rhythm that had once felt meditative. Now it was a lifeline, something to hold on to as the world I'd built over 16 years crumbled beneath my feet. Across the room, Daniel paced, his phone glowing with the banking app that had just become our battleground. The numbers stared back at us. $1,392. 1392. A pitiful remnant of the $31,247.89 that had been there an hour ago. Our SaveYNGS, our security, the fragile thread of a future we'd woven together. What have you done? My voice didn't sound like mine. It was too steady, too hollow, a stranger's echo in the chaos. The knife trembled in my grip, its blade catching the light as I set it down with deliberate care. What I should have done the second you told me you got laid off, Daniel spat, his tone sharp and unfamiliar. Gone was the warm, gravelly timbre I'd fallen for all those years ago, replaced by something cold, serrated. I've been dragging you along for too long, Claire. You're a burden now. Time you figured out how to survive you without me holding your hand. The words cut deeper than the knife ever could, slicing through the air and lodging in my chest. A burden. After 16 years of quiet sacrifices, of dimming my own light so his could shine brighter, that's what I'd become to him. I stared at him, his broad shoulders hunched over the phone, his dark hair mussed from running his hands through it in frustration. He didn't see Minute the woman I'd been, not the woman I still was. He saw a liability, a weight to shed. What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that I'd been preparing for a moment like this for years. Not out of suspicion, not at first, but out of a whispered instinct passed down from my grandmother, Evelyn, who taught me that a woman should always have a piece of herself tucked away, safe from the world's betrayals. Half Arsavandus might be gone, vanished with a few taps of his finger, but I had my own secret account, a fortress he'd never breach. And now, with his mistress abandoning him and his carefully curated life unraveling, Daniel would learn just how heavy a burden he could become. 16 years ago, I'd met Daniel at a rooftop mixer in downtown Raleigh. The kind of event where ambition hung thick in the air, mingling with the scent of expensive cologne and cheap wine. I was 26, fresh off a master's degree in communications, my career at Pinnacle Media taking off like a rocket. I'd just landed a campaign for a national retailer, my name whispered in boardrooms as a rising star. Daniel, 29, was a construction project manager with big dreams and bigger charisma, his hazel eyes glinting with a hunger I mistook for passion. He'd leaned against the railing, sketching blueprints on a cocktail napkin, promising me we'd build an empire together. You and me, Claire, he'd said, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers down my spine. We're unstoppable. I believed him. How could I not? He was magnetic, a force of nature who made the impossible feel within reach. We were equals, then partners in ambition, in love, in the thrill of chasing something bigger than ourselves. I polished his proposals while he cheered my late-night brainstorming sessions. Our wedding, a year later, was intimate but electric, held in a garden under string lights, his toast ringing in my ears. To my partner, my equal, here's to our empire. I didn't realize then that empires often crown only one king. The shift began subtly, a slow erosion I didn't notice until it was too late. 3 years in, Pinnacle offered me a promotion, director of strategy in their Chicago office. It was a dream, a leap that would have put me on track to run my own agency someday. I raced home, a bottle of Prosecco under my arm, ready to celebrate. But Daniel was already there, slumped on the couch, a rejection letter from a bank crumpled in his fist. They won't fund my firm, he muttered, not looking up. Fourth no this month. I sat beside him, the Prosecco forgotten. There's a job, he said after a pause. Mid-level gig with Grayson Construction. Not my dream, but it's a start. Problem is, it's here, not Chicago. The silence that followed was a crossroads, though I didn't see it then. His dream or mine? One of us had to bend. Chicago can wait, I said, the words slipping out before I could weigh them. You need this more right now. His relief was palpable, his arms pulling me close as he whispered thanks into my hair. I told myself it was temporary, that my turn would come. The next day I declined the offer, my boss's voice tight with disbelief over the phone. You're throwing away a rare shot, Claire. You sure about this? I'm Zure, elite. Family first. From there the balance tipped. Daniel thrived at Grayson, his salary climbing, his network sprawling. I took a job at a smaller firm, Harper Va Company. A lateral move that kept me local but stalled my trajectory. It's just for now, I'd whisper to myself, editing Daniel's reports late at night or researching competitors for his pitches. His success became our success, his dreams our dreams. Mine faded into the background, a watercolor left too long in the sun. When our daughter Sophie arrived 4 years later, my compromises felt noble. I cut back to part-time work, then returned to a mid-level role at Harper that offered flexibility but no real power. You're so lucky, Daniel would say, tossing his tie onto the counter after a long day. No pressure, just a simple gig. I'm the one carrying the load. Each comment was a paper cut, small, stinging, cumulative. My simple gig paid a third of our bills. My no-pressure life included running our household, raising Sophie, and keeping Daniel's world spinning. But I smiled, nodded, played the part. You work so hard, honey. We're grateful. The signs were there had I dared to look. He started calling my income pocket money, dismissing it as frivolous. He made big financial moves, refinancing the house, buying a new truck without asking me, while voying off my questions with a condescending, "Don't worry your pretty head about it." At parties he'd interrupt when people asked about my work, chuckling, "Claire keeps a few local shops afloat. Nothing like what we're doing at Grayson." I'd laugh along, swallowing the humiliation, telling myself it was stress, not disrespect. The day before my layoff, Daniel came home buzzing with news. "Regional VP." He grinned, lifting me off the floor in a rare burst of joy. "All those sacrifices paid off, babe." I didn't ask whose sacrifices he meant. We celebrated with takeout and a bottle of Merlot, the last good night I'd remember. The next morning started like any other. Sophie needed her soccer cleats for practice, Daniel his gray suit for a meeting. I had a 9:30 presentation at Harper, a pitch for a craft brewery I'd poured weeks into. At 8:52 my desk phone rang. "Claire, conference room C," chirped Lisa from HR, her tone too bright. My stomach dropped. The room held 5 people. Lisa, my boss Ryan, the owner Ellen, a stern-faced man in a suit, and a woman with a clipboard I didn't recognize. "Sit down, Claire," Ellen said, her voice clipped. Ryan wouldn't look at me as Ellen explained. "Budget cuts, market shifts, my role redundant. 16 years of loyalty reduced to a severance packet and a handshake." "You've been invaluable," Lisa recited, her words hollow. "We're consolidating creative." "I understand," I said, though I didn't. Within an hour I was in the parking lot. A cardboard box in my arms, Sophie's finger-painted mug. A photo of us at the beach, a dying succulent. 16 years, 1 box. I called Daniel from the car, my voice steady. "Hey, it's me. Something happened at work. Call me back." No answer. Dear of Wying home. A strange hope flickered. Maybe this was a chance, a reset. With Daniel's promotion we had cushion. I could pivot, start something new. By afternoon I'd updated my LinkedIn, applied to 2 jobs, and made his favorite chili. When he walked in at 7:19, I handed him a beer, smiling. "You're early. Harper let me go today." He froze, the beer untouched. "Severance." His first word, not sorry or "Are you okay?" 3 months plus vacation pay, I said, setting the bottle down. "With your promotion we'll be fine." "Fine." He laughed, bitter and sharp. "You think this is fine timing?" The fight erupted like a storm, his voice rising, his boots stomping across the tile. "You're so damn selfish, Claire. I can't deal with this." He grabbed his keys and left. I sat up until 2 a.m., replaying his words, the beer warming on the counter. The next morning he barely spoke, kissing Sophie's forehead before heading to work. I spent the day drafting a budget, determined to prove I wasn't helpless. When he came home I showed him the spreadsheet. "With severance and SAVYNGS, we're good for 6 months. He cut me off, staring at his phone, his face paling. "You've been MOVYing money." "What?" "No," I leaned over. "Our joint account. $1,392. 1,392. Where's our money?" "Safe," he said, his eyes hard. "Where you can't touch it. You had no right." I whispered, my voice shaking. That's ours, both of us. I earned it, he snapped. You're a burden now, Claire. I'm done carrying you. He grabbed his jacket and left again. I stood there, the knife still on the counter, my hands trembling with a rage I didn't know I could feel. Don found me at his desk, the house silent except for the hum of the fridge. Sophie was at school, Daniel at work. I dug through his files, his laptop, his life. Credit card statements showed dinners at steakhouses we'd never cited, a Dula 400 hotel stay, a Dula 1,200 necklace I'd never worn. His iPad buzzed with texts from Amara. I'd later learn full of hearts and plans and, when are you leaving her? My breath caught but my hands stayed steady, snapping photos of every damning detail. That night, I told Sophie her dad was on a trip. We ate pizza, watched a rom-com, and I braided her hair, memorizing her lavender scent. Is everything okay, Mom? She asked, her green eyes too wise for 15. It will be, I promised, meaning it. After she slept, I made calls. To Evelyn's estate lawyer, to my old friend Nora who'd always hated Daniel, to my cousin Ben, a quiet player in the construction world. I slipped off my wedding ring, left it on Daniel's pillow and checked my secret account. Dula 158,923.47. Who's the burden now? I murmured, a smile tugging at my lips. Evelyn had seen it coming long before I did. 6 years into my marriage, she'd called me to her farmhouse, a weather gem on the outskirts of Cary. At 80, she still gardened, her hands gnarled but sure as she handed me a deed. This is yours now, Claire, she'd said, her voice firm. House, land, all of it. Tell no one, not your mom, not Daniel. Why not Daniel? I'd asked, confused. She'd fixed me with those steel gray eyes. A woman needs something of her own. My Henry was a saint, but even he didn't know about my rainy day fund. You've been dimming yourself for that man. This is your insurance. I'd laughed, thinking she was dramatic. She wasn't. When she died a year later, I kept it quiet, renting the place out, funneling the income into a separate account. Small deposits from my paycheck joined at Dula 75 here, Dula 200 there, unnoticed in our cushy life. Daniel never questioned girl stuff expenses. It grew, my silent rebellion, my safety net. Now it was my lifeline. The next morning, a text from Daniel. Coming by at 11 to grab stuff. I checked Sophie's college fund online, 3 rejected withdrawal attempts, all needing my sign-off. He tried to take that too. I called the firm, flagged the account, then dialed Ben. I need your help, I said. It's Daniel. About damn time, Ben replied. As a board member of the Regional Builders Association, he'd seen Daniel's mask slip, shady deals, broken promises. He's been screwing around with Mara, his assistant, for a year. Everyone knows. Names, I said. I need his contacts, his world. What's the plan? Ben asked, wary. Just waking up, I said. By noon I had a list. Clients, suppliers, rivals. Mara's Instagram showed a 28-year-old with a taste for luxury and captions about waiting for my king. When Daniel arrived, I was ice calm. Sophie's home at 3:30. Be gone by then. I handed him the 529 statement. Explain this. That's not, he stammered. Save it. I cut in. Your stuff's in the spare room. As he stormed upstairs, my phone pinged. A developer upping their offer on Evelyn's property to Dula 420,000. Timing, it seemed, was on my side. Where am I supposed to go? Daniel whined, lugging suitcases down. Isn't that Mara's problem now? I asked, watching his bravado crack. He'd expected me to crumble. Instead, he met a woman he didn't recognize, one with steel in her spine. The next day, I launched Ellis Creative, my new firm, with a loan against Evelyn's property. I rented an office across from Grayson's headquarters, the sign black and gold gleaming in the sun. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. My first client was Tara Mills, an architect Daniel had undercut for years. Your ex is a snake, she said, signing my contract. Let's bury him. Word spread. Within a month I had 3 clients, all Grayson competitors, my years of eavesdropping on Daniel's rants now a goldmine. At a networking lunch, I ran into him, escorting a Grayson exec. Claire, he nodded, tense. Tara and I were just discussing her Elm Street project, I said, smiling. Brilliant design. Elm Street was his white whale. His eyes flickered with panic as I handed the exec my card. His text came later. What the hell are you doing? I didn't reply. Daniel's fall accelerated. Ben reported missed payments, a risky loan, rumors of skimming. Credit alerts showed him maxing out cards on Mara dinners, trips, a Dula 3000 bracelet. He got her a ring, Sophie said one night, scrolling Mara's posts. Subtle, Dad. I kept her out of the ugliest parts, but she saw enough. He's scared, she said, trying to prove he's still a big shot. The end came at Grayson's fall gala. I attended as Tara's guest, watching Daniel flaunt Mara until his card was declined at the bar. She stormed off. He shrank. Everything okay? I asked, sipping my wine. Perfect, he lied, his voice brittle. Sophie mentioned the science fair. You coming? Can't, he muttered. Work. Funny, I said. I spoke to Jim Grayson today. Your project's stalled. His face crumpled. Days later, Mara's posts turned bitter rants about liars and self-respect. She was gone. His reputation tanked. The paper ran a piece on financial irregularities at Grayson, his name a whisper away from ruin. Then he showed up at my office, disheveled, desperate. I need help, he croaked. Money. Temporary. Why would I? I asked, calm. We have Sophie. 16 years. You called me a burden, I said. You took everything and left me to drown. I'm not your lifeline. What am I supposed to do? Fear cracked his voice. Start over, I said, walking away. Like you told me to. That night, Sophie and I watched the stars from our deck. Will Dad be okay? She asked. When he learns who he is without the show, I said. My reflection in the window was a woman reborn, unburdened, unstoppable. Ella's creative thrived, my team grew, and Daniel faded into a cautionary tale. The burden, it turned out, was never mine to bear.